So, welcome everyone. My name is Roberto Reyes with the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and we're here celebrating Latinx Hispanic Heritage Month. And today we are doing our professional Connections and Culture series, our PCC series, and we are highlighting professionals within the community. And we are really wanting to highlight our Latinx professionals in various fields and seeing how they excel and how they connect back with their culture, and seeing how we can really celebrate that within ourselves 365 days a year. So we're actually here with Dr. Ed Rivera-Valentin. Did I say it?
Yeah.
So, and I would love for them to introduce themselves. So please go on ahead.
Saludos, everyone. I'm Edgard Rivera-Valentin. I'm a planetary scientist at the Lunar and Planetary Institute in Houston, Texas.
Yeah, welcome. We have a planetary scientist, y'all. It's almost like a rocket scientist, but not really.
Almost.
So no, but I would love to pick your brain and know exactly what kind of research do you do, and do you study like any specific planets? I guess just to start off with your career, basically, and how did you get involved with planetary science of all things?
Right, great questions. So I'm from Arecibo, Puerto Rico, which is the location where the Arecibo Observatory is, the largest and best radio radar telescope in the world. As a kid, my family took me up to the observatory yearly. And getting to see all the really cool science that was done there, the cool astronomy and the cool planetary science, that's what inspired me to go pursue a career in planetary science. When I was an undergrad, I got the chance to start taking interdisciplinary classes. So I got to take physics and geology and geophysics and get to see how everything merges together. And I started to learn that I really like doing science that's at the fringes of different fields. So that ended up leading me to pick a career that doesn't focus on a planet, that doesn't focus on a process, but rather, like, I call myself the planet tracker. So I'm on Twitter at planettracky, because I like to do what's called system science. And that is when you look at a planet, instead of saying, well, I'll look at just the soil, just the geology there, or I'll look at the atmosphere and how the atmosphere is doing its thing. I like to say, okay, but what is the atmosphere doing to the geology? And how is that impacting each other to make what we're observing today? And so what that ends up leading to is I focus my research on two applied sciences, and that's planetary defense and planetary protection. So for protection, I look at where could there be what are called habitable environments. So where in the solar system do we think we'll find places where if we take terrestrial life, that terrestrial life will survive there and propagate? Because if that happens, then if we take microbes off to Mars and they can survive there, then we ruined our chances of ever finding natural life on Mars because we, infected it. So I look at what is the possibility of that infection happening over to Mars. And that's what's called planetary protection. Planetary defense, I get to use the Arecibo Observatory. I do radar science, so I study asteroids, and I make sure that none of them are gonna hurt us. And if one of them ever heads our way, we do the science, the characterization of the asteroids to make sure that NASA knows when it's gonna happen and how to move it away.
Okay, definitely. Is there one coming around election day? Because I know that was on the news.
We're all gonna die. It's election day. We're all gonna die. That's what's gonna happen.
Especially if we don't vote.
Yeah, true point. No, we're not gonna die. It is coming really close though. It's small enough. It's gonna come close and then whiz on by.
Okay, you heard it here first, y'all. Y'all still have to go out and vote.
Yes.
Well, that's fascinating work, and I know for our students at Texas Southern, there isn't a specific planetary science field, but I know that you mentioned on how you came into this particular field that you're in. I know we have chemistry, we have physics, engineering, biology. Are those all kind of good starts to kind of get your feet wet into that realm if you're interested in the stars and the planets?
For sure. The neat thing about planetary science and even astronomy is that it is a very interdisciplinary field. So, for example, my college did not have a degree in planetary science or even astronomy. It had degrees in physics and math and geology. So I did degrees in physics, math, and geology because if you put that all together, it started to do the things that I like to do. But if you were into chemistry and geology, geochemistry of planets is important. If you're into biology and chemistry, then that gets you more into the astrobiology aspect of Planetary. It's all about making sure that you understand those subdisciplines and how they come together. And then you can make a career out of the weaving of all of that together.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, the only reason I asked is because I'm always thinking back to how I grew up and just being an immigrant, and my parents being immigrants, it was always doctor or lawyer. And so a lot of, young people come into to college thinking of law or medicine and think of science as just the track for medicine. So yeah, it's good to know, everyone.
Yeah. My abuela was exactly the same way. You're going to college, great. When are you going to be the doctor? Because we need a doctor. I was like, I'll be a doctor, just not that type of doctor.
Mira, you are a doctor, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. Well, speaking of your abuela and your background, you said you're from Puerto Rico. Do you stay connected to back home, or how do you stay connected to your culture? Especially here in Houston.
I fly home before COVID ever started. I was at home at least once a year. I talk to my abuela at least once every 2 weeks. Well, that's when I call her. She also calls me almost once every week itself. So, that happens. But yeah, there's everything from my culture is part of just my everyday life, like how I cook, what I'm cooking, what I'm eating. Behind me, that's a nice picture of San Juan, El Viejo San Juan.
Okay.
In front of me, also a bunch of pictures of Viejo San Juan. Over here, as a good Puerto Rican, I have the big Puerto Rican flag. I mean, it's always with me.
Subtle.
Subtle, very subtle.
No, that's cool. It's you're very orgulloso, very prideful with where you're from. So no, that's a given, I think, with everyone, and especially our Puerto Ricans. I've been to the Puerto Rican Pride Parade in New York once in my life, and it was amazing.
So well, it's fun. And do you know where all that comes from? Why we're super, super orgulloso of our flag? So when we first became an American colony, there was a law that said that we weren't allowed to fly the Puerto Rican flag. And then that took a very long time to change. And a lot of people actually died because there was a lot of revolts against colonialism in Puerto Rico. So there's this vestige of super, super pride with our flag because there was a long time in history where we weren't allowed to fly it. And so now we've all been like, well, fine, now we're going to overdo it. We're going to fly it everywhere. I'm all for that.
There you go. Well, and that's especially with all of us that are identified as Latinx. We all identify with our nationality first and foremost. I mean, I have Argentina flags flying around everywhere. My daughter's first outfit was an Argentina jersey because they will win the World Cup soon, hopefully. So, well, and in regards to your culture, how do you feel like you bring in your culture into your field, into your day-to-day work life?
So I'm really big with what's called visibility. So like, for example, when I write my emails, I start it with saludos and I will end it with gracias. Whenever I introduce myself in a meeting, if I'm at a conference or if I'm meeting people, I don't say my name is Edgard Rivera-Valentin. It's Edgard Rivera-Valentin. I will say it with the right pronunciation and accent. And then I'll be like, for you, you can say Ed, that's fine. But you're gonna hear the actual Spanish pronunciation of this. I try to make sure to, first and foremost, let people know, yes, I'm Latinx, yes, I'm Rican. I will bring this to your forefront. We might not be well represented in planetary science, but we are here. And that's one, to make sure to normalize Latinx and STEM and in planetary science, but also if there is somebody else, students who want to go into planetary, students, graduate students, postdocs, let them know that there is a community and that, hey, I might be someone that they can reach out to.
Oh, definitely. And do you find that there is a lot of, I guess you could say, diversity when it comes to Latinx and like African American and like other marginalized groups that are identified in STEM, especially in your field?
In my field, good thing you asked. So I'm currently leading a white paper on the demographics of planetary science. There was a survey done by the Division of Planetary Sciences of the American Astronomical Society. And so I took all that data, and I'm really big into math and stats. So I did a full demo analysis to try to find trends in underrepresentation. The big gist there is, we've been employing all of these EDI initiatives. Where are they working? Where are they not working?
Right.
And when you look at that in my field, there's been changes in terms of representation of women, for example. From the 2011 survey, women accounted for about 25% of planetary science. Currently, they account for 37% in planetary science. So there's been positive growth there. When you look at Latinx in 2011 were 1% of planetary scientists. Now they are 4% in planetary science. That is still severely underrepresented, given that currently I believe Latinx in the national civilian labor workforce were about 17%.
Right.
So 17 versus 4, super underrepresented. But still some growth, although that growth is also tracking with the national growth of the Latinx community. The place where there was zero growth was for Black and African-American students and researchers. In 2011, it was 1% of planetary science, and today it's still 1%. So with all this data and looking through the demographics of PhD graduates into the field, the NASA workforce by job type and whatnot, we provide recommendations so that people know, okay, we did really good here for this demographic group, but overall, in every way that you can analyze it, we have done zero to little tiny itty bitty progress for Latinx and African Americans in planetary science.
Right. Well, there's always work to be done, right? So, but I mean, there's always a good start to start a planetary program in an HBCU like TSU.
Yeah. Do it. Do
right?
it.
So anybody interested, we are in the Space City, y'all. Well, when it comes to representation, I know that the representation is smaller in the STEM fields, particularly in planetary science. How do you feel diversity or inclusivity is welcomed? Especially now with all the social change that's happening, like I know a lot of fields are seeing like drastic, like we got to reevaluate everything. We got to look at our policies. We got to promote from within and whatnot. Do you see that sudden impact in your field?
So I guess what I would say is in this year, there has been